American history actually began thousands of years before Columbus. Deep within the Ice Age, nomadic hunters crossed the frozen Bering land bridge connecting Asia to Alaska, gradually spreading across the continent and giving rise to thousands of unique cultures and civilizations, from the majestic empires of the Incas and Aztecs to the diverse tribes of North America. These peoples shaped the land long before European arrival. Everything changed in 1492 when Christopher Columbus sailed across the Atlantic. This momentous encounter bridged two separated hemispheres, igniting the Columbian Exchange, a massive transfer of plants, animals, cultures, and unfortunately, devastating European diseases that decimated native populations. As the American Pageant highlights, this profound collision of worlds permanently altered the course of human history and set the stage for the modern era. While Spain claimed vast southern empires, England was determined not to be left behind in the race for New World riches. In 1607, English settlers established Jamestown in Virginia, England's first permanent colony. The early years were catastrophic. Starvation, disease, and hostile conflicts nearly wiped the colony out. However, under the stern leadership of Captain John Smith and the agricultural breakthrough of John Rolfe, who successfully cultivated tobacco, Jamestown transformed. Tobacco quickly became a European sensation, fueling Virginia's economy and laying the tragic foundation for plantation slavery. Simultaneously, other English movements were brewing. These tentative, struggling steps by English settlers laid the early building blocks for a future global superpower. In the North, the colonial story began for an entirely different reason: religious freedom. In 1620, a group of separatists known as the Pilgrims arrived aboard the Mayflower, landing at Plymouth Rock. Desperate to escape persecution in England, they sought to build a society rooted in their strict religious beliefs. Despite a brutal first winter, assistance from local Native Americans allowed them to survive, inspiring the tradition of Thanksgiving. Soon after, under John Winthrop, the Massachusetts Bay Colony was founded with the grand vision of being a city upon a hill, a moral beacon for the world. Yet intolerance within these Puritan communities sparked dissent, leading to the creation of neighboring colonies like Rhode Island. Together, these northern settlements forged a resilient, hard-working, and deeply communal spirit that would define American culture. Life in 17th-century America was harsh, brief, and heavily dependent on the land. In the Chesapeake region, the insatiable European demand for tobacco dictated daily existence. Initially, wealthy planters relied on indentured servants, poor Europeans trading years of labor for passage to America. However, as indentured servants became scarcer and increasingly rebellious, Southern planters shifted toward a brutal alternative: chattel slavery. Thousands of enslaved Africans were forced across the horrific Middle Passage to toil on massive plantations. Meanwhile, New England life revolved tightly around small towns, family farms, and the church. Because the northern climate was healthier and families migrated together, life expectancy was notably higher than in the South. The American Pageant notes how these stark regional differences began shaping two distinct American identities: a commercial, town-based North and a rural, plantation-driven South. By the mid-18th century, the 13 British colonies had transformed into a dynamic, rapidly growing society. Unlike rigid European class structures, colonial America offered remarkable social mobility for ambitious white settlers. The economy was booming, fueled by diverse trade networks, bustling port cities like Boston and Philadelphia, and a massive population surge. Culturally, the colonies were shaken by the Great Awakening, a massive religious revival that swept across the land, challenging established religious authorities and fostering a shared sense of individual identity and independence. Simultaneously, The Enlightenment introduced ideas of liberty, reason, and natural rights. Although the colonists remained fiercely loyal to the British Crown, they were quietly developing a unique political culture. They enjoyed elected assemblies and a high degree of self-rule, setting the stage for an inevitable collision with the mother country. The close of the French and Indian War in 1763 fundamentally altered the relationship between Britain and its American colonies. Heavily in debt from the global conflict, the British Parliament decided that the colonists should help pay for their own defence. A series of restrictive taxes followed: the Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, and the Tea Act. Colonists were outraged, famously crying out, "No taxation without representation." Tensions boiled over in events like the Boston Massacre, where British soldiers fired on an angry mob, and the Boston Tea Party, where defiant patriots dumped British tea into the harbour. Parliament responded with harsh punitive measures known as the Coercive Acts, aimed at crushing colonial resistance. Instead, these laws united the colonies like never before. The path of diplomacy was rapidly closing, and the drums of war began to beat. The American Revolutionary War officially began with the shot heard round the world at Lexington and Concord in 1775. Facing the mightiest military empire on earth, the ragtag Continental Army, led by General George Washington, faced insurmountable odds. In July 1776, the Continental Congress formally adopted the Declaration of Independence, written primarily by Thomas Jefferson, articulating the radical idea that all men possess unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The war was brutal and deeply divided the colonists between patriots and loyalists. A major turning point arrived in 1777 at the Battle of Saratoga, where a stunning American victory convinced France to enter the war as an American ally. With French naval and military support, the British forces were eventually cornered at Yorktown. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed, officially recognizing the birth of a brand new independent nation. Winning independence was only half the battle. Building a stable government proved even harder. The new nation's first constitution, the Articles of Confederation, created a weak central government intentionally designed to avoid tyranny. However, it quickly proved disastrously ineffective. It couldn't tax, regulate trade, or enforce laws, leading to economic chaos and domestic uprisings like Shays' Rebellion. Recognizing the urgent need for change, 55 delegates gathered in Philadelphia in 1787 for the Constitutional Convention. What followed was a summer of intense debate, fierce compromises between large and small states, and the creation of a totally new framework of government. The resulting U.S. Constitution established a federal system with a clever system of checks and balances across three branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. After fierce political battles, the Bill of Rights was added to protect individual liberties, securing the foundation of American democracy. With the Constitution ratified, the young American Republic faced the monumental task of turning words on paper into a functioning government. Unanimously elected, George Washington took office as the first president in 1789, setting vital precedents for the office. His brilliant Treasury Secretary, Alexander Hamilton, devised an ambitious financial plan to stabilize the national economy through a national bank, federal assumption of state debts, and manufacturing tariffs. Hamilton's bold vision sparked fierce political opposition from Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who feared a powerful central government and championed an agrarian society instead. This intense ideological clash gave birth to America's first political parties, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Internationally, Washington successfully steered the fragile nation through the dangerous waters of the French Revolution by issuing a firm proclamation of neutrality, ensuring the survival and growth of the infant republic. The election of 1800 marked a historic milestone, the peaceful transfer of political power from one party to another, known as the Revolution of 1800. President Thomas Jefferson stepped into office aiming to scale back federal power, yet his administration oversaw one of the greatest land acquisitions in human history. In 1803, Jefferson purchased the vast Louisiana Territory from France for $15 million, instantly doubling the size of the United States. He quickly dispatched Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore this uncharted western wilderness, inspiring dreams of a continental nation. However, the Jeffersonian era also brought heavy challenges. Caught in the global crossfire of the Napoleonic Wars between Britain and France, American shipping faced constant harassment and British impressment of sailors. Jefferson's retaliatory trade embargo crippled the domestic economy. As the American pageant concludes this foundational era, the young nation stood on the brink of yet another major test, the War of 1812, to prove its sovereignty once and for all.